For this project, I used one 100-gram ball of yarn. This yarn is 95% acrylic and 5% metallic, so it has this lovely glitter sheen to it, which is just perfect for a summer project. I split my ball into 2 equally sized balls, and I also raided my stash for just a cheap yarn I could use for seaming. This ball was 10 grams, but I barely used any of it. So to get started, we will cast on using the E-wrap method on every other needle. Place your yarn to the left of the first needle and wrap it around. You may need to hold on to the first one so it doesn't fall off while you crank to needle number 3. Wrap your yarn around needle number 3, then move on to needle number 5, 7, 9, etc. Keep your tension loose or you won't be able to complete the next row. We will be creating a flat panel, so if you've not done this before, I recommend you check out my flat panel video first and then come back. So you want to stop when you get to needle number 43. I've just added a little bit of masking tape to keep me right. And then we're going to add the working yarn now and head back the way we came. You'll need to push each stitch down as you go. Hopefully you haven't cast on too tightly and this shouldn't be too difficult. But if it does seem impossible or really tight, you might need to start again and cast on just a little bit looser. Once row 1 is complete and you've made it back to needle 1, you want to take the yarn out of the yarn guide and make sure the yarn wraps around this pin. Then we will manually knit every other needle. This is pretty much the same process as a standard cast on. We will go in front of the odd numbered needles and behind the even numbered needles. So just like we did on the last row, keep an eye out for any stitches that we may need to push down. By the end of that row, make sure your yarn travels under that marked pin, then place it back in the yarn guide and head back the way you came. There's nothing special about this row, so just crank your way back to needle number 1, remembering to push down any stuck stitches and looping the yarn around the marked pin. And then we just repeat that process. Remove the yarn from the guide and manually knit only the odd needles for 1 row, and then knit a normal row, and repeat. I actually found this quite relaxing. Usually on the machine I'm all about speed. This was quite nice to move the machine nice and slowly and just enjoy the process. But if speed is more your style, then we can knit a few rows, just going back and forth for 5 or 10 rows, then doing a manual row of only the odd needles. After each manual row, I would do 1 normal row and then give the fabric a little tug. Isn't that just so beautiful? Just watch them all fall. So just continue that process, whichever one you prefer, until you run out of yarn. You don't need to count rows for this project. Just remember to give the fabric a tug to make sure everything falls evenly. And when you only have a small tail of yarn left, it's time to cast off. Remove the working yarn from the guide and with some scrap yarn on a darning needle, pick up only the odd numbered stitches. You may need to lift the even number stitches off manually. Once I got going, I would pick up a stitch and then use the darning needle to lift one. So pick one up, lift the next, pick one up, lift the next, and so on until you are free from the machine. And then you will want to repeat that entire process with the other ball of yarn.
Alright, so we cast on with an E-wrap cast on, so now we want to cast off with an E-wrap cast off, just so both edges look the same. Now I've just pinned up a few of my stitches just so it makes it easier to see what I'm doing. You don't have to do this, but if you do struggle with tension, you might want to lay out your piece and make sure it's the width you want it to be and pin it up. And I'm going to use a contrasting colour just so you can see what I'm doing, but obviously you would do this with either more of the same yarn or some of the white yarn. So what we want to do is we want to go into the second stitch from top to bottom. So in we go. I'll just leave a little bit of slack so we can weave that in. And then we want to go back to the first stitch and we want to go from back to front. And then that's the first stitch done. So then we move on to the next one. So the next stitch, we're going to go from top to the bottom. And then we go back to the previous stitch and we go from back to front. And you want to go underneath the stitch. So we get the line that we've cast off goes along the top. Okay, and then the next one, so we go from front to back. Okay, and back to front, make sure the stitch is on the top. Okay, and then one more time, so from front to back. And then back to front with the stitch on top. Okay, so I'll just take the pins out so you can see what that'll look like. There we go, and it's nice and stretchy. You should hopefully have two pieces with finished edges. Lay them next to each other like so. Seam up each end, leaving a gap in the middle for your head to go through. Then fold in half. And seam up the sides, leaving space for your arms to go through. If you're not sure how much space you need for your head and arms, lay a piece over each shoulder and add markers to where you want it to close in the front and back and down each side. I made my back section longer than my front by 12 rows, but that's just a personal preference. Once you have everything marked out, stitch up to the markers. I tried out a few different seaming methods, but the one I liked the best was this one. I'm not sure what this method is called, but I'll put a little diagram on the screen that I found on Pinterest. If you know what this joining method is called, please comment the name below. It created an almost invisible join, but without the bulk of mattress stitch. It did use a lot of yarn though, so you will need at least 3 times the length of the seam. The other method I liked, which used no extra yarn, was an adaptation of a Russian graft. It's not perfect, but it looks fine, especially from a distance, and as this is the back seam, I couldn't be bothered to unpick it and redo it. Then you can try on your finished cover-up and style to your liking. You can create an I-cord or braided cord from yarn, or grab some ribbon and close up the bust area for a more modest look, or you can add a tie around the waist for a more fitted look. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I am very happy with the finished result. If you give this a go, please comment below and let me know how it went. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it. I hope you all have a nice summer. Bye.